Che. Welcome. This is Randy Wallace, and welcome to Squaw's Corner. What do you want? That's my dog. It was a beautiful day for Maryland. You know, kind of an unusual winter, I guess. We still haven't had any appreciable snow. So it was in the 50s today, so I was on the bike and had to go for a ride. That's why I'm wearing what I'm wearing. And I got a little bit of helmet hair. I did brush my hair, but after a couple hours in the helmet, it doesn't matter. Last time I talked, I said I thought it would be a good idea to talk about when I drove cross country as a girl. The first time I drove across the country as a girl. Now, I had made a lot of little trips. You know, a day trip. 100 miles, 200 miles. And you would change back to boy mode before you get where you're going. You know, check into the hotel or wherever you're staying. But in 2008, October of 2008, that's when my father passed. Now, I live here in Maryland, and my parents lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I took the time off from work, which was not a problem. And I thought about, the option of flying was obviously there. But I was like, I'd spoke with my mother. It was not a sense of urgency that I get there. So I was like, okay. And she said, just drive, which I'm like, okay, I'll drive. And I was single at the time. My divorce had already happened. So I was already pretty much living as a girl. Not at work, but the rest of my life. So I was like, okay, I will be there. Give me about 3 days, I guess. I think that's what I took, 3 days. 2 nights, 3 days to get there. I was still a lot of driving. So I left, and I made the trip. And I think the first eventful part of that trip was, it was probably about 8 o'clock that evening. I don't know where I was at geographically. And, 400 or 500 miles from here. And I had to stop and get gas. So I stopped. Now I'm in full girl mode. But at the time, my full girl mode really kind of looked like guy in a dress. I mean, that's to be honest, the truth. I was still more guy and then girl in appearance. And so I stopped. Now, I was pretty brave for my time, I guess. And I didn't challenge anybody about it. If they laughed at me, I was just like, yeah, have a nice day. I just kind of dealt with it that way. I didn't make an issue of it. But I stopped at this gas station. I was getting gas and tried my credit card. I think I was using my bank card. So I tried my bank card and it declined. And I'm like, okay. So I tried another card and it declined. And I'm like, okay. And the speaker, because I was at a outside gas station, had the speakers at the pumps. The attendant inside she says, you need to come in, and I can. It says your cards are being declined. You need to come in, and I can tell you what's going on. So I'm like, okay. So I go into the gas station. I mean, like I said, I'm wearing a dress, and I got my hair and my makeup on, and I'm trying to be presentable. And I go in there, and she's like, she was very pleasant with me. And she's like, your cards are being declined. It says you need to call the bank. And I says, oh, I didn't know what was going on. So I called, and it was something quite simple. Because I'd been in a hurry to leave, I did not notify my bank or my cards that I was going to be making a trip across the country. So it was they thought my cards had gotten stolen and were being used, because all of a sudden they're seeing this trail of credit, gas usages at gas stations and stopping to eat, going across states. So I called and said, hey, this is what's going on. I'm going home. My father passed. Need to be there, by Saturday or whatever it was. And they're like, okay, we've cleared the account. You're good. It was just a fraud warning, I guess, that they thought was going on. And I'm like, I'm actually glad that they did it in that respect. It was annoying, but it was only a 30-minute thing where I had to stop, had to call somebody, everything. But I think the thing I learned out of that was this perfect stranger, this woman who was 40s. She treated me very nice. She was referring to me as ma'am. She did not call me a guy. And she said, you look pretty nice. And she says, as we were talking, she's like, what's your hurry to get across? And I told her I was going home for my dad's funeral. And she's like, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but hopefully, and she says, and she asked me a few questions. We talked a few minutes. Because she asked me, she says, well, do they know or do they understand? And I said, I know they know, but they haven't personally met me as a girl. We have not had that discussion, which I had wanted to do, but I wanted to do it in person. But time ran out. So that's one of the things other people need to realize. We'll never have the perfect time. And I think I was waiting for not the perfect time, but a better time in person. And I just couldn't get to that side of the country. Because like I said, my divorce was fairly recent. And quite honestly, I was broke and quite strapped to be able to make a trip. My parents did know, because my ex had called and told them when we started the divorce, when she started the divorce, which is a whole nother story. But when I did reach home, I got to Railroad Pass, if any of you know where that is in Las Vegas. That's coming in from Hoover Dam, Boulder City. I got to the casino at Railroad Pass, and I changed. I changed from girl to boy. Now, obviously, my mother was having it was a very tough time for my mother. My dad had just passed a few days earlier. So I was thinking more of her than me. I did not, I changed back to boy. And I was at home for a week as a boy with my mother. And saw my brother. My sister was still incarcerated at the time. That could be a story all by itself. But I got to spend some time with her. And I tried to talk to her about this a little bit, but I didn't want to create any more stress in her life. And all she told me, or the closest we got to talking between us about the issue. Now remember, I was born in '57, so my mother is a product of the '40s and '50s, and all she would admit to me was that when I was an infant, she said I was very prissy. Now, I think prissy in 1957, 58 terms would have been kind of gay acting, I guess. But I was, yeah, she told me, she says, that's all she would ever admit to me, that I was very prissy and that I would rather play with the girls than be with the boys in the sandbox. Because she's telling me she's kept putting me in the sandbox with the other boys to play, and I would start crying and throw a fit and scream and just, stand there and want out of the box. I don't remember it, but I guess, she said it happened, so I guess it happened. I have to believe her on that because she says I was very prissy. I wanted to be clean. I wanted to play with the girls. They had the stroller or the Barbie. I don't even know if it was Barbie around in '57. Whatever the doll was at that time. So I think that was kind of cool. When I wish I could remember more of it personally. I do remember being where she's talking about, because that's where my sister was born. They're in a little town in Colorado. And so I do remember, I do have a distinct memory of being out there and it's starting to hail. And I remember I was trying to cover up or do something because the hail was hitting me and it hurt. Ice falling from the sky, hail. So I do have that memory of that. I guess, because it implants itself in your memory, in your psyche. So anyhow, I did spend some time at home. I spent, I think, 5 days, 6 days at home. And now my mother, like I said, it was stressful for my mom. We just did the thing with my father for the funeral. She was going through some personal struggles medically. So, because she had 3 cancers. She had breast cancer, she had skin cancer, and lung cancer. She'd been a smoker since, I don't know, I think she told me she started smoking corn silk behind the barn in Oklahoma when she was 12. Something like that. Her and my some of my aunt and my other cousins and whatnot that of her age. So that's my dog. That's not me. So that's kind of family, I guess. We were pretty eccentric, I guess, in that respect. You didn't know what you were getting, and still don't. But I spent the time there, and then when it was time for me to leave, I remember we went to IHOP, and we had breakfast at IHOP, and I was in my Pathfinder, Nissan Pathfinder. So it already had 2 suitcases in there. His suitcase and her suitcase. Now, my mother never saw what was in the other suitcase. She just saw me in his suitcase. So when I left there. I drove the 10 miles or so across town, up Boulder Highway, got to Railroad Pass, and I got out my girl's suitcase, and I changed. And I came back across the country, again as a girl. It it was very stressful and remembering for me, and because one, the reason for the trip, my father, but I also used it as an opportunity to test the waters, if you will. That how well did I pass? And not even passing. I don't even think I expected to pass. I think it was more like, would I be accepted? Would I be ridiculed or made fun of? Or would I just be just another traveler? And as I remember it, for the most part, I was just another traveler. I was just another face in the crowd. I would stop and have breakfast, lunch, or dinner wherever I felt the need. I like stopping at Cracker Barrel for breakfast. So most of my stops were probably like at a Cracker Barrel for breakfast. And I did stop and stay at a hotel twice. But I had no troubles, no problems. Now, this was in '08. So that was still very early in the LGBTQ community coming out full force, I guess. The trans part, anyhow. But I had no troubles with it. I found it easier than I thought it would be. I thought I would be a basket of nerves. I was a basket of nerves for the service, for the funeral. By comparison, going across country as a girl and stopping and going into a restaurant that's kind of crowded for lunch. And I had a few people who looked at me like, "Oh, big girl. Oh, maybe that's not a girl." But none of them said anything to me. I was not refused service anywhere. Everybody likes that green money. And I think just because I was not trying to be conspicuous, I just wanted to go in, have my lunch, have my meal, mind my own business, and leave. I had a few, probably the waitresses or waiters at sometimes ask me, questions. How did I want to be addressed? And I think that was being polite on their part. But I made it all the way back. No fights, no issues, no run-ins with the police being called because there's a pervert in Cracker Barrel. So none of that happened, which was probably all my big fears. That it would be a big issue. I got back here. I think I took 2 days to just decompress from the trip when I got home. And I was still, I don't know how fast, you recover from burying a parent. And the emotions that you're prepared for. And even now, I'm choking up a little bit because I loved my father very much. And I wish I'd had the opportunity to personally talk to him about this. I know he would have accepted me. In my heart, I know he would have accepted me. And that's what makes life easy for me. I know my parents accepted me. And they were from a generation that, this would have been hard. But they loved me. And I love them. So with that, I got to close this because I'm getting too emotional. But thank you very much. Adios. Adieu. Good night. A couple other languages, I guess you could say it in. Crap, I'm crying. All right. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.